Good evening, I'm Sapsanamma. Let's begin with the headlines of the hour. Budget for the upcoming fiscal year to be unveiled at the Parliament this Tuesday. Government's policies and programs endorsed with majority amid obstruction by Nepali Congress. Premier Dahal and Nepali Congress President Dewa hold talks to seek consensus on the terms of reference of Parliamentary Probe Committee of the fraud related to cooperatives. At least 7 newborn babies dead and 5 injured following a fire at a hospital in Delhi. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal says the incident is being investigated. And Kolkata Knight Riders to clash against Sunrisers Hyderabad in the Indian Premier League title decider tonight. Final in Chennai to kick off at 7:45 p.m. Nepal time. Budget for the upcoming fiscal year is scheduled to be presented at the Parliament this Tuesday at 1 p.m. Speaker Devraj Khimire has called a meeting of the joint session of the Federal Parliament at that time to announce the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Speaker Khimire has urged lawmakers to reach the Parliament by 12:45 p.m. on the day the budget is being unveiled. Finance Minister Barshaman Pun is scheduled to unveil the budget for the fiscal year 2024-25 in the joint session of the House of Representatives and the National Assembly. There is a constitution provision to unveil the budget on 15th of Jesta as per the Nepali calendar, which is on 28th of May this year. The meeting of the lower house, however, has been called for 4 p.m. on the same day. Meanwhile, today's session of the House of Representatives passed the government's policies and programs amid obstruction by main opposition Nepali Congress. Finance Minister Pun presented the financial survey for the upcoming budget and the annual report of the public institution from the well of the House of Representatives today amid protests by Nepali Congress lawmakers. Lawmaker of Rashtra Swatantra Party, Swarnim Wagle, called the protest by the opposition embarrassing and meaningless. Speaking at the beginning of today's meeting of the House of Representatives, Chief Whip of Rashtra Prajatantra Party, Gyanendra Bahadur Shahi, said investigations should be carried out on Deputy Prime Minister and Home Minister Ravi Lamichhane, who has been alleged of involvement in cooperatives fraud. Meanwhile, the meeting of the National Assembly was also held today. Prime Minister and CPN Maui Centre Chair Pushpa Kamal Dahal met with Nepali Congress President Sher Bahadur Dewa this morning. During the one-on-one meeting, Dewa reiterated Nepali Congress's stand on forming the probe committee by including Deputy Prime Minister and Home Minister Ravi Lamichhane's name. Prime Minister Dahal reached Dewa's residence in Buranilkantha this morning to seek consensus on the Parliamentary Probe Committee to investigate the fraud of cooperatives. Premier Dahal is understood to have suggested Dewa to reach an agreement. He also urged Dewa to be flexible on ending the obstruction at the Parliament. Political parties have agreed to form a probe committee to investigate the fraud of cooperatives. However, the terms of reference remain to be decided. A task force formed to reach a conclusion on the terms of reference led by Minister for Law, Justice and Parliamentary Affairs, Padam Giri, failed to reach an agreement. As an agreement remained elusive despite more than 5 rounds of talks, the responsibility of reaching a consensus was assigned to senior leaders. Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal has expressed confidence that the consensus will be reached between political parties ahead of unveiling the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. While responding to the queries raised on the government's policies and programs at the Parliament today, Premier Dahal urged everyone to show flexibility on deciding the terms of reference of the probe committee. Premier Dahal also informed that he was making efforts to end the ongoing obstruction at the Parliament. Dahal said that he was unhappy with the Parliament obstruction and it should end at the earliest. Time now for international update. At least 7 newborn babies have died and 5 have been injured following a fire at a hospital in Delhi, India. The blaze broke out late last night at a hospital in the Indian capital's Vivek Vihar region. Senior police officer Surendra Chaudhary has said there were 12 babies in the unit. Authorities said legal action would be taken against the owner of the hospital who had fled. Delhi's Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal said the fire was heartbreaking. He said the causes of the incident are being investigated and whoever is responsible for this negligence will not be spared. The director of Delhi's fire department, Atul Garg, said that 14 fire trucks were sent to fight the blaze. Officials said rescue efforts were slowed by limited access to the building, which has a single staircase and no fire escape. The hospital is squeezed between residential houses, and it is not clear yet whether it followed all safety regulations nor what initially caused the fire. Prime Minister Narendra Modi wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter, that the fire tragedy at a hospital in Delhi was heart-rending. Earlier yesterday, a massive fire broke out at a games arcade in Rajkot in the western state of Gujarat. Local officials said at least 27 people have perished in that blaze. Many of the victims are believed to be children. Now, UN official has said around 670 people are estimated to be buried under a massive landslide in Papua New Guinea. The head of the International Organization for Migration in Papua New Guinea, Serhan Aktoprak, said the impact of last Friday's landslide in the country's isolated Enga province was greater than initially thought. Aktoprak said there are an estimated 150 plus houses now buried. The affected areas are in the highlands of Enga in the north of the island nation in the southwest Pacific. Aktoprak said rescuers were at risk because the land is still sliding. He said the water is running and this is creating a massive risk for everyone involved. There are nearly 4,000 people living in the area hit by the landslide. But Care Australia, the humanitarian agency which is helping with relief efforts, warned that the number affected was likely to be higher because of an influx of people escaping tribal conflicts in neighboring areas. At least 1,000 people have been displaced as a result of the disaster. Aktoprak said gardens that had grown food and water supplies were almost completely wiped out. The landslide happened at around 3 a.m. local time on Friday, when people were more likely to be sleeping. A spokesman for Hamas's armed wing said its fighters had captured Israeli soldiers during fighting in Jabalia in northern Gaza, though the Israeli military has denied the claim. The Hamas armed wing spokesman did not say how many soldiers had been abducted and showed no proof of the claim. The Israeli military on Sunday denied the claim by Hamas's armed wing. The comments by Abu Ubaidah came hours after prospects for a resumption of mediated Gaza ceasefire talks grew on Saturday. An official with knowledge of the matter said a decision had been taken to resume the talks next week after the chief of Israel's Mossad intelligence agency met the head of the CIA and the Prime Minister of Qatar. The source, who declined to be identified by name or nationality, said it had been decided that in the coming week, negotiations will open based on new proposals led by the mediators, Egypt and Qatar, and with active U.S. involvement. A Hamas official later denied Israeli media reports the talks would resume in Cairo on Tuesday, telling Reuters there is no date. After more than 7 months of war in Gaza, the mediators have struggled to secure a breakthrough, with Israel seeking the release of hostages held by Hamas and Hamas seeking an end to the war and a release of Palestinian prisoners in Israel. Nearly 36,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israel's offensive, Gaza Health Ministry has said. Israel began the operation in response to Hamas-led militants attacking southern Israeli communities on 7th of October last year, killing around 1,200 people and seizing more than 250 hostages, according to Israeli tallies. Now, Yemen's Houthi group freed more than 100 detainees in Sana'a, calling the move a unilateral humanitarian initiative to pardon prisoners and return them to their families. Most of them are in humanitarian cases, including the sick, the wounded and the elderly, said Abdul Qadir al-Murtada, the head of the Houthi-run Prisoner Affairs Committee, who announced the release and said the detainees had been government soldiers captured at the battlefront. But Yemen's internationally recognized government said the detainees were not soldiers but civilians the Houthis had kidnapped from their homes and workplaces. The International Committee of the Red Cross confirmed today the unilateral release of 113 conflict-related detainees and said in a statement that it assisted the detainees to ensure their release was humane and dignified. Yemen has been marred in conflict since the Houthis ousted the government from the capital Sana'a in late 2014. The Saudi Arabia-led military coalition intervened in 2015 aiming to restore the government. The outlines of a proposed Yemen-UN roadmap for peace were agreed last December, but progress towards peace has stalled as the Houthis ramped up attacks on ships in and around the Red Sea, saying they are acting in solidarity with Palestinians in the Gaza war. The campaign has disrupted global commerce, stoked fears of inflation, and deepened concern that fallout from the Israel-Hamas war could destabilize the Middle East. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol have agreed to foster deeper ties during a bilateral meeting in Seoul. In remarks made during the meeting, Kishida hailed a trustful relationship with Yoon and said he was looking forward to maintaining shuttle diplomacy or regular visits between the leaders in the wake of improved bilateral relations. Earlier, South Korean activists held a rally to condemn the meeting between President Yoon and Japanese Prime Minister Kishida a day before a trilateral summit with China's Premier Li Qiang. The activists, which included 95-year-old former comfort woman Lee Yong-soo, gathered near the presidential office in Seoul and held up signs containing messages on various disputes overshadowing relations between South Korea and Japan.
빨리 배상을 집행해 달라고 하는 그래서 함께 해결을 하고 서로 왕래하면서 우리는 역사를 지키면서 여러분들이 역사를 젊은 사람이고 태어난 사람이고 이 역사를 알아야 됩니다.
Relations between the two North Asian nation, U.S. allies have been strained over disputes dating to Japan's 1910-1945 occupation of Korea. Koreans accused Japan of forcing women to work in wartime brothels for the Japanese military and use forced labor, among other abuses. Yoon has worked to improve ties with Japan, which occupied the Korean peninsula and parts of China, among other areas in Asia before the Second World War. That is all for the moment. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.